things before we move on logistically. First thing is just making like, as you know, like basically all of us are muted at this point. If you're not, please just check and make sure that you are, so that we can keep sort of the noise to a minimum, as it were. And then, but also note that there is, if you hover your mouse over the video screen, there is a chat button. And there, what you can do there is actually chat and send questions and talk and, well, yeah, send in chat, obviously. But you can send, what we're hoping you'll do is as you have questions for anybody who is presenting, you can actually just type your question in there and we'll all see it, and then we can actually address those particular questions. We will, like, so what we're gonna do is start with Mike Feeker, and then have a little time for questions, and then we'll go on to Chuck, and then also have some time for questions there too. Okay? Michelle, is there anything I forgot that I shouldn't have forgotten?
Nope, we're good to go. If I can just have everyone make sure that your video is turned off if you are not a presenter, and also make sure that you are on mute, but we are good to go, and we are also recording.
Great. Thanks. Okay, Mike, I think we can shift over to you. If you want to go ahead and share your screen, that'd be great.
Okay, great stuff. All right, bear with me. Okay, so can everyone see that?
I can, yep.
Can everyone see? Okay. All right, so thanks, Patty, and thanks for the introduction, and hi, everyone. So yeah, Mike Feeker is my name, and I'm the founder and CEO of Allison. And Allison is today one of the world's largest platforms for free online learning, and we focus on the workplace. So we have 700 to 800 free courses at certificate and diploma level, from touch typing to how to use Excel, to how to speak English, to project management, to the basics of nursing, to the basics of Arabic. So it's a very global platform, and I'll go through some of the stats. I wanted to quickly talk you through a presentation that I made last week. Chuck was on the call, joined me in Florida at this conference. It's a leading conference for all the workforce agencies across the United States. It's run by a company called Geographic Solutions. And rather than just redressing it up for yourselves, I thought it would just let it go as it was, so that you'll see that it's an authentic presentation. I titled the presentation "Informal Learning Becoming the New Formal" because I think that this is inevitable. There is so much, there's a tsunami of high quality free online learning going live, that the amount of learning that's going to be done informally outside of traditional universities and colleges is going to be simply huge in comparison to where it's been in the past. And I'll show you how that's going to happen through some of the stuff that we're doing. So the informal learning, the whole idea of just learning outside of a traditional structure is going to become so much bigger in the future. So just flicking through, I just started the presentation, as I'll start now, just saying that we literally have to reconstitute how learning is done today. We have to turn it on its head, and there's your fine US Jeffersonian constitution upside down over there, but it's just the idea of really keeping space in your head to look differently at how learning can be done, and training. And then the next slide is just, why is this necessary? Well, it's quite simply that the learning and training system that we have today is way too slow. It doesn't teach us enough on when we want to be taught. It's too shallow. There's not enough of content on everything. We cannot just access learning on everything at a fingertip like we should be able to do. Colleges only, and universities and training centers only have so many courses, and that's just not good enough in today's technology. It's way too costly. Every one of us on the call knows of people that are incredibly indebted for the education that they have, and in many cases that education isn't providing them with the standard of living that they hoped it would. Education can be free, so let's talk about that. And it's too inaccessible. We're stopping people from learning, and we have the tools today to make high quality education available to anyone worldwide at any time, anywhere. And so we have to look at this, because it's not even just an opportunity, it's almost a human rights issue. We need to do something about it. So Our vision and our mission at Allison is to literally drive all of the costs of online skills training and learning to zero. And we see 4 areas fundamentally in learning. It's the learning itself. We make learning free online by simply providing advertisement around the learning. Now, it's very focused advertising. It's if you're studying an accounting course in Allison, there's probably some for-profit college trying to pitch you an accounting degree somewhere. But we've successfully made all of our content freely accessible just using advertising and by certification, so that when you finish a course, if you get 80% of the assessment correctly after you do a course in Allison, either a certificate or a diploma or an advanced diploma, you are then an Allison graduate. But I'll show you how the testing and the certification works in a moment. The free learning management, most of you are involved in organizing training for organizations, not just for yourself, but LMSs or free or learning management systems have been very costly to date. It's a multi-billion-dollar business, but on the likes of Allison, all of the learning management functionality is free. At the end of the day, it's digital. Once you've created it, the marginal cost of providing it to another person is next to zero. And so we need to make that happen. And then the last one is publishing. Essentially, people like to share their knowledge, but they haven't had the tools to do it. So I think we're at a tremendous point of civilization where we're not. Most people are moving from being learners all of their life to also being teachers. So if we can get everyone both learning and teaching, we can have an enormous amount of knowledge and skill transfer in the world, such like we've never had before. So I think what's coming in learning is just simply going to change human civilization and nothing less. Allison is nearly 10 years old. This is our 9th birthday, and we have about 40 staff here in Galway, and it's very international. We have about 12 or 13 different nationalities from different places. Our learners, we have approaching 8 million learners worldwide now, and they're signed up from every country, and we have graduates of our courses in every country, and we nearly have 1 million graduates. You can see just this as an example, from India to Mauritius to Pakistan. These are people who have done our courses, just to give you a flavor. Worldwide, I would say 7 million, we're nearly at 8 million now. We're signing up between 200 and 300,000 people a month, so obviously with a lot of traffic. 750 to 800 free courses. As I said, 800,000 to nearly 1 million graduates now, graduating 1,300 to 1,400 people a day, even though we've beat those numbers this week. So think of any institution, educational institution that you know, are any of them graduating, 1,300, 1,400 people a day. You'd be struggling to find somebody, any entity that does that. We're based in Ireland, as you can probably take from my strong brogue, but we're very international. In the last month, I have been in India, China, Montreal, in Canada, the States. I travel a lot because our learners are everywhere. We have our biggest market is the United States. It's the most important market for us because it's a big developed country and the learners are quite demanding there. We also have, though, over 1 million learners in India and 1.5 million across Africa. And how that works is literally if somebody clicks an ad in California, it pays for about 100 people in Africa. So it's important for us to make sure that our learning is of very high quality and competitive in the likes of the United States. And essentially the developing world comes along for free then. And it's different from times past where the developing world used to get our seconds and now they don't have to that because they can access exactly the same as we do. In the United States, I'm just giving a quick slide of the concentration. We have a lot of learners in California. It's our single biggest market, and in Florida. And then the rest basically follows demographic patterns. Courses that are very popular in the United States, our top courses there are the diploma in customer service, diploma in project management, introduction to conversational English, obviously the big and growing Hispanic community, and touch typing. It's amazing how many people work in an office and have never done a touch typing course, and it saves them months of their lives. How Allison works is simply this. You do the course online, it's entirely self-paced, and then you do an assessment. So if you get 80% of the assessment correct, you are then an Allison graduate. The challenge is, though, is that literally anybody with an iPhone or a smartphone device can test you on that standard at any time. So if you say that you've done a diploma in project management in an interview situation, the employer does not have to take your word for it. He can simply, or he or she can simply give you a test right there and then. It's like years ago if you said that you could type 50 words per minute on a typewriter, and the person listening to you didn't have to take your word. They could just put you in front of a typewriter and see if you could do 50 words per minute in your speed and your quality of typing. Because the internet is pervasive everywhere and ubiquitous, the fact is that you can actually ask anyone and question them on anything at any time, anywhere. So there's two things really changing the world of education. One is the smartphone, or no, the internet, because it's ubiquitous and you can actually connect people to this test bed, test database anywhere. And then the smartphone. And the smartphone is one of the most powerful devices ever known to man, because it can bring the world to your handset and into your hand. And in the developing world, it's amazing. And I've in India last month, and it's people will get rid of their they will do without food before they get rid of their phone. And even in India, there's an average of 2 phones per person, and that's even in a country of 1.2 billion people. So phones is the way to get to people. Years ago, I didn't think that people would learn on a phone, maybe because I was just liked laptops and desktops. But when the phone is what you have, it's amazing. People just use it, and it is the future, no question about it. Then I talked about the free learning management. You can literally, if there was 1,000 people in your organization and you wanted them to study a particular course in Allison, you could go onto that course, set up a group, and if you had the email addresses, invite all 1,000 people to study, and you'd be able to watch the progress of those people, who started, who got what right, and who got it what wrong, who certified and in what time. All of that information is freely available. And then the last one is then about free publishing. What Allison is trying to do is to create standards on every subject worldwide. So education and training worldwide has been very political and very nationalistic. So, and even in the States, you see how every state has its own standards. But actually, the internet can ignore all of these physical borders. And what we're trying to do is to create a standard in anything from project management to speaking English. So you start with 101, 102, 103, and you keep going as long as there's content in that area to certify. The one nice thing about Allison, and I think one reason why Digital Promise and ourselves find a lot of common ground, is that free learning is amazing how it helps people that are marginalized, whether helping people to get back into education, whether after having had children, or even people that are disabled or handicapped in some way, that they can actually access from home. So many very talented people are living in their homes, but because of mobility issues can't get out. You can get them online, you can train them, you can get them working, or people like refugees. When I was in India, we have over 1 million learners, so I just wanted to quickly tell the stories of these 5 learners, and these 5 learners could be in the middle of the United States. Amish, the guy up there with the tash, it just said, traveled 16 hours in a bus to thank me that he had been using Allison to train his 25 students in his little town in the west of India. He was teaching them chemistry, biology, and maths. And he had a lot of marketing or teaching material that was available for free for him to use in his classrooms for many years. Kushal, the next guy, is a student who's learning Python. It's a computer program, and he was able to study that at school, but also do courses on Python on Allison. And reckoned he came along just to testify that it made him what he thought was the best student in the class. The guy down the corner in the red jersey, he's a cyber security engineer. He did a diploma in project management on Allison, and it allowed him to get a promotion. And he just came to say, "Look, it's changed my life." The guy with the Sikh chap with the headdress has a construction company in Mumbai, and he put on 750 people in his company onto Allison. And the last person is the entrepreneur, Piyush. He comes from a family business, and he did courses in supply management and manufacturing on Allison. And he just came to just to say that it gave him the confidence to take the leadership of the family business because he hadn't done any training in that area. So just 5 stories of how it can access. The next story is just, we work with USAID around the world, and one interesting project we did was in Iraq, in the Kurdish area, and we worked with the local university there to create the first, basically, online learning in the Kurdish language. And this is in a war zone. It's a very difficult situation to be learning in, but it's amazing. Online learning can get into these areas that people might fear to tread. Also, we're working with USAID in Central America. We're doing projects in Honduras and Guatemala and in Jamaica under a USAID program at the moment. So interesting cooperation there. I'm going to let Chuck talk a little bit more about this, but a personal issue, a personal campaign I've had is over the years is, particularly in the United States. I don't sound like it, but I was actually born in New York, and I have an American passport, and I'm American as much as I am Irish. But always been appalled by the number of people in prison in America, and there's about 3 million people in prison. There's about 6 million on parole. And how do you change the opportunity for these people when they come out? And I felt that education really has to be brought to these people, particularly if it's free, and there's opportunity to do that because it's free. And these people are from the workforce communities in DC, and the chap beside me there with the glasses is John Linton, and he is the head, or was the head of correctional education at the Department of Education in Washington. So very, very high end buy-in to what we're doing. We created a course last year called an Advanced Diploma in Workforce Reentry to give to people who are coming out of prison as a way to sharpen up their capability of getting a job. So things that we taught them in this course is, simply how to get your resume together, why you turn up at work on time, all of these things that you might take for granted, but are important stuff that they learn when they're coming out. And then we had a landmark decision in March where we, with Chuck's help, we got a judge, and that's William Watson, Judge William Watson at the background there, who, instead of sentencing a young man to prison, told him to go off and study an Allison course online. And we've had about 11 people that have gone through this now, and they're just compelled to do learning. And yeah, I'll let Chuck tell the story here. But the fact is that I believe that education is going to become a component in every single sentence in every court worldwide from now on, because it's free, a judge can impose it. Years ago, a judge would be very reluctant to tell a defendant to go and study if they couldn't provide the means for the student to do so. But if it's free and they can access in a library, or they can go to a faith-based organization and get access to a PC like this young man Dylan did, then there's no reason why the court can't impose it. On the other side, from the defendant usually has very little money. But again, if it's free for them to come in and all it costs them is their time, then why not? So think of any sort of an offense, from somebody who's speeding or someone who is under the influence of alcohol. They can do courses to explain to them why they shouldn't be doing this. I think, anyway, I think it's a really interesting departure. Just the last few slides here, just talking about education and training. Free learning gets a lot of resistance, because simply that education is a massive business worldwide, and there's a load of people next to every one of you where you're sitting that wanted to stay the way it is. There's many a college president who's on his hundreds of thousands of dollars salary every year. The last thing that these people want is education to be free, because it changes their business and puts a lot of people out of work, but at the same time makes opportunity for other people. I have not seen in my 15 years of doing this one good teacher being made unemployed through online learning. It just doesn't happen. Good teachers will always be around. So you have to be aware, as free learning comes in, that there's some people that will be resisting it, and we just have to resist their resistance. One slide here is just, many might be familiar with the music industry. Music industry, very few people buy albums and whatever. So the revenues in the music industry have gone way down recently, and it's affected a lot of music companies, but the consumption has gone way up. So I think education is going to be like this. There's going to be less revenue around for universities and colleges, but the consumption of education is going to go way, way up, because it's going to be free and easily accessible. And then, what's going to happen? In the past, people did their high school, they went to secondary school, as they call it outside of the States, they go to university and they go into the workforce. But what you're going to see increasingly is people going direct into the workforce, because they're going to be trained. They're going to have a lot of learning done individually without cost. So you're going to have free access to the workplace. You're going to have employer-specific courses. You're going to have employers developing courses specifically for their employees, because it's easier than ever to create these courses. Dynamics, in the sense of courses are going to be very dynamic. They're going to be very up-to-date, because it's easy to keep them up to date. And the informal is going to become the formal, in the sense of all of this learning opportunity we have around us is going to become the main way people learn. And then to talk about governments. What can governments do to bring in informal learning? Well, the first thing they can do is, within their organization, is to recognize informal learning. So when you're hiring, make it a rule that when somebody's hiring somebody, they ask them, well, what informal learning have you done? Have you learned anything online for free? And because it tells the employer that this person is still learning, that they don't have to teach them everything that they're going to know. And particularly for people that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, who generally find it tough to get a job, they need to prove that they're still learning. And so there's a lot that government can do and organizations can do without costing them a lot of money. It's just simply recognizing informal learning within their environment. We're integrated with the Geographic Solutions System, which means we're integrated with the Department of Labor in 22 states. So if you're unemployed in Florida, you can go online and go onto this system and access Allison for free. So the summary, what's the future holding? Well, learning for everyone for free. It's going to happen and we're going to lead it. You can learn anything, anywhere, anytime. Universal certification on every subject, that's going to happen. And again, it's going to be free. Learning management for every organization, non-profit, for-profit, again, free. Publishing, shared knowledge for skill. And why is it free? It's because there is a business model out there that makes money for people to make it free. So Allison is a for-profit social enterprise. We are really, what we're trying to do is to use technology of today to make all of these things free, to make a sustainable buck while we do it, but really to change how people learn worldwide. And that's my bit. And I'm not sure how long that took me, but I appreciate you listening to me there. So open to questions.
Any questions, anyone? Yeah, no, that was great, Mike. Thank you. I'm like looking in chat, see if anybody had any questions at this point. You can certainly have moments to ask later too, after with Chuck as he does his little spiel too. So
actually, I'll jump in for a second. Mike, something you pointed out last week I think was interesting was there was that poll done in the UK about of all the top employers, and they said rank what you look for in a prospective employee, and one of the top things was what we would call informal learning or self-driven learning, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that was a survey done by the Open University, and it asked the top 1,000 employers across the UK, what are the most important things that you ask for in an interview? And the first thing is one that's unexpected. It's what formal education do you have? What degree did you do? What diploma did you do? The second thing was looking for character references, which we can all understand. The third thing was, what informal learning have you done? And this is the third top thing from the top 1,000 employers in the UK. So this is basically 90% of the people being hired in the UK are being asked, what informal learning have you done? Because the fact is that there's so much online learning available for free now that employers are beginning to expect it, that you're not reliant on the degree that you did 20 years ago. I have some fun sometimes when I go into talking to people, groups of people about learning, and I ask them how many people in the room have done degrees, and they nearly all of them put up their hands. And then you ask them how many people put that down when they applied for their last job, and they all put up their hands. And then I ask them how many of them would like to be tested on it right now, and they all put down their hand and they giggle. And they say, you know, and really what it's showing is this is a real old system that we've hung on to. It used to be the best that we had, but now today it isn't. Most of us have forgotten what we learned in our degrees, and it really tells more about who we were and what our socioeconomic status was 20, 30 years ago when we went to college. Nowadays, the means are there to test somebody on what they know now. And so when you apply for a job on a Monday morning, you can test, an employer can test, you know, right up to the day that you start, you know, what does this person know right now? You can set a sequence of tests for them, and you can find out what that person really knows. You don't have to be taking their word for it. And employers love that certainty, and that's why they're embracing it.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, so if there aren't any questions at this particular moment, Chuck, why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization, the Orleans Niagara BOCES, and then we can just talk a little bit too about how you're, you know, sort of the challenges, like how you came about using Allison and sort of the challenges you were trying to solve there and some of that stuff.
Sure. And normally when I'm speaking to a group, I say someone.
Oh, wait. Sorry, just one sec.
Yeah.
Mike, can you stop sharing your screen now? And then that way we can see.
You don't need to see me up close.
There we go.
You're very hungry.
Thanks.
Okay. I was going to say is normally when I'm speaking to a group, I say flag me down when I lose you. But since I can't see all of you, if you can maybe put up a virtual hand, I'm going to try to make a 1-hour speech in about 3 minutes so that I can make this make sense. So throw up a chat question if I'm confusing. I'm a Title II adult education provider in New York. So adult basic education is pretty much the name of our game. We are the task exam in New York. We went away from the GED 2 years ago. So high school equivalency and then employment. We are aligned with our Department of Social Services in our counties. Anyone that applies for any social service above and beyond just SNAP benefits, food stamps, is required to come through our programs for education and employment services. If they don't have a high school diploma, they're in classes every day trying to achieve that. If they're above a 9th grade comprehension level in the basics, reading and math, and they have a diploma, they're in a job class, just hunting for a job a couple of days a week. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what we do. And then a step above that is what New York calls the literacy zone concept, which is about 8 years old now. And the philosophy there was that adult education providers are dealing with a population of people, which you all know, their biggest problem is not their inability to do math problems. It's poverty and everything that comes with it, drug abuse and crime and violence and all the horrible things you see on the news every day are the things that we see every day. Quite literally, not for shock value, there was a shooting outside my office window about 100 feet away from me this morning. This is what we're dealing with. This is the 4th one this year, quite frankly, within a block of our offices. So we see these things daily, and when we say, okay, well, time to do math, it doesn't always ring true. So the literacy zone approach said, hire case managers, hire coordinators, and then quite simply fix all these social and economic problems so that the people can focus on education, they can focus on learning, training, certification, and then getting the job that they need. A lot of that was tied to how to reach your students where they are, which brings Allison into play quite a bit. We, for years, have just tried to put classrooms in every community that we teach in. We're, as the name implies, Orleans, Niagara, Bossies. We're in Orleans and Niagara County in New York. So Western New York, as close to Canada as you can get. But people think of Niagara Falls, I'm sure they have a very romantic view of what it is. Jimmy Fallon got in some trouble a few months ago because he said, if you go to Niagara Falls, go to Canada. I'm telling you, he's right. I've been in Niagara Falls every day this week, and it's not a place you'd like to be after dark, at least on the American side. So we're trying to put schools everywhere in the most impoverished communities that we serve to try to reach our students, but we can do a better job. And the way to do a better job with that is with digital learning. So from the Allison perspective, where we kind of got talking was, I think it was back in November, someone from Allison, actually from Digital Promise, actually was the common link there. Allison was looking just kind of for a conversation about incarcerated education and judicial education in courtroom settings and in jails and prisons. They just wanted to kind of pick someone's brain, if you will, about how they could approach it. And through Digital Promise, they got turned on to me because we operate the educational services in both of our county jails, as well as I think now 5 treatment courts. So talking about drug courts, veterans courts, young adult mental health courts, what we would call specialty courts. A big component of all those treatment courts are you need to have a high school diploma before you can graduate, and you need to have a full-time job, given that you're capable. So you academically can achieve those goals, and you're not on permanent disability. So that's really where we came in. So that's where the conversation started, and the representative from Allison just kind of, after talking for a while, said, do you think you have a judge that would be willing to quite literally assign education in lieu of some other punishment? And we're talking about something that would normally fall in the community service type category. So we're saying, instead of doing 10 hours community service this week, you're going to do 10 hours of learning this week. My answer was yes. Our judge in Lockport, New York, where one of my biggest offices is very progressive when it comes to this kind of thing. He loves the idea of creative approaches to punishment and truly bettering the individual. Don't just punish them for what they did. Try to improve them to the point that they won't need to do that crime again. So we approached Judge William Watson, whose picture you saw a minute ago, and just said, what do you think? And as I suspected, he loved it. So after a couple of conversations, one day in court, I was sitting there, and Dylan, the young man whose picture you saw as well, was in front of him, and he said, you know what? I'm gonna assign you some learning to do. And he didn't put any stipulations on it other than time. He said, I want you to do 20 hours of learning over, I think it was 3 weeks. It was his reporting session. Do 20 hours of learning. You can pick the course. I hope you pick something that will hopefully apply to you, but I'm not going to put restrictions on it. So I think Dylan did some business courses. His goal is to, and still is to open a business at some point. So he took some business management courses. through the learning management system that Mike was talking about and some of the reporting that they have. I was able to track his usage. So from the adult education provider standpoint, right, all we care about is numbers. How often are they using it? What can I bill for? That kind of thing. So with their LMS, you can actually see how much time they're spending on the course, as well as if they've taken the final exams, the results of that, the actual the results. So that was the first start of the process as far as actually using it in that courtroom setting. At the time, I was thinking, this is great. You know, in this specific treatment court world, not to bore you guys with all the details, but the idea is every week or so, these people are called in front of the judge to answer for everything they did that week. Most people, it's just, how was your week? Went to work, went to your counseling session, no problem, see you in a couple weeks. But when there's a problem, that's when punishments start coming into play. Some are black and white. You're going to jail for a week if you missed a drug screen. There's no way around that. But if you were late for a meeting, if you forgot to call in one day, if you missed something minor, like school, well, I don't think it's minor, but the judge thinks it's minor, you would get usually community service, community pride, which is mandated community service, things like that. But what the judge said was, I would much rather assign something that is going to benefit the individual in the long run. What surprised me as we've gone down this road, I've talked to probably half a dozen judges now, at least that subset that I've spoken to unanimously does not like community service in the least. They think it's a waste of everyone's time. They sincerely hope the person's taking something valuable from the experience, but in their heart of hearts, they know they're not. They're just trying to keep them busy and find a way that they can in some way give back to the community that they took from. But if, in the sense of learning, if it's free, if it's accessible, and they can, well, that's the two main ones, then they can assign it and say, okay, hopefully you're actually bettering yourself. So fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, a judge in a rural town near me, who had contacted me before and kind of saw the article in the paper and said, well, how do I get on board? So we kind of just got together and we talked him through it. He assigned someone from a criminal case, so not treatment court, just a standalone criminal case. He assigned him, as part of a conditional discharge, 100 hours of learning over the next year, which I thought was a pretty creative approach to this. And when I kind of called him the next day after he sent me the email saying, here's the stipulations of what we did, I just said, why was that your first approach? You know, when we talked, it was going to be, I'm going to assign, you go do a time management course, it'll take you 2 hours. You went from there to 100 hours over the course of a year. And his response was pretty telling. He said this guy had been in jail twice and he had been on probation twice. The crime was the same all 4 times. Clearly, whatever we were doing wasn't working for this guy. So what do I have to lose other than to assign him, go learn something, quite literally go learn something. And hopefully it'll get you on a path that doesn't lead back to having to steal something that isn't yours, back into crime and back in front of me every year or so for the rest of your life. So I thought that was kind of a creative approach to that. One more quick example was another judge close to me. Again, it's kind of a very rural town. He called me several times asking specifically about alcohol-related programming. And I couldn't quite get the angle that he was coming from. And I had mentioned it to the previous judge I spoke about, and he kind of said, Chuck, you're a dope. The guy lives in Darien, New York. If you Google it, Darien, New York is home to Six Flags Darien Lake, which is like the roller coaster capital of the world. So even though the town is only about 1,000 people, there's 30,000 people there on a summer night because they have a major outside concert venue. So they turn over about 1,000 DWI cases every single weekend. So he needs programming that he can assign from his small bench in the middle of nowhere, New York, that people that maybe have come from Pennsylvania, Toronto, wherever they drove in for the concert, he wants to be able to assign them a punishment, but not have to make them drive back to the middle of nowhere, New York every week to account for it. So again, I thought that was a pretty creative approach from that judge's perspective on how he can utilize a tool, again, to give value to the person, but not further punish them beyond what they had done. Going forward, I'm hoping our computer class in the Niagara County Jail is currently under construction. So I don't have any computers in there. Typically I do though. We have second of its kind, quick plug for myself, second computer lab with full internet access in a county jail in New York. Certainly heavily monitored, heavily securitized. No one can go anywhere without specific permission on that day, at that time, for that person, for that terminal. But once that computer lab is fully operational again, I'm told within a month, we're going to hopefully start using it not only for the workforce reentry course Mike spoke about. So kind of here's the battle plan, if you will, for once you're released, the things you need to think about, here's what you need to do, here are the steps. But also academics. In any classroom, again, you're all adult educators, you know this. You're going to have an array of people on different levels. So to be able to say, we're working on algebra today, but you're going to go over here and do some multiplying. And there's plenty of academic math courses on Allison. Same with science and things like that. So an academic approach, I think, is also very key to this, is that for your students, whether they're incarcerated like some of mine, or they just live too far away to get to you every day, or they have childcare issues, or in the case of me, transportation issues, there's no more local buses where I'm from, so they literally cannot get to our schools, even if I put them in every single community. It's that ability to tell a student, go on Allison and take the algebra class. That way you won't miss what we're talking about this week. Or, go take the chemistry class because you're missing science, and things like that. Things that if you were looking at a traditional license fee for, from, the McGraw-Hills, Pearson VUEs of the world, we're talking we pay them every year, tens of thousands of dollars to get access to these systems where people can go online, take a class to get a grade, and then you can see that with their management system completely for free. So certainly for smaller programs that can't afford these obscene licensing costs, it's an absolute no-brainer when it comes to that kind of thing. I think that's it. Did that all make sense? Am I rambling diatribe?
No, you're great. So my question would be too, then, talk a little bit about sort of the student response. How are they, from an access point of view, is that working? Are they, yes, I'm coming to it and happy with it? And then just in general, how are they managing their own learning and all of that?
No, it's been a very positive response. It's specifically the ones I've been most hands-on with are those 10 or 11 that we've gone through the court system. Most of them, if we're being honest, we're in one of our computer labs, because I've got a computer lab not 2 blocks from the courthouse. So usually they go to court, they get assigned, and they walk right over, and we plunk them in front of a computer and say, here you go. So we've, and this is just the nature of how we do business, we've taken access as a problem out of it. But I will say Dylan, the first guy there, I think he did almost all of his initial learning on his phone. So he was just sitting home watching his daughter and doing his learning. And I think, not to get all warm and fuzzy on you, but I think that is when we think of it, from the adult ed standpoint, that's our dream, right? Is that young single parents can sit at home and do their learning and when they can, because that's the biggest hurdle. So we did a quick kind of trial with one of our what we call job readiness training classes. Again, it's a class structured around social services, folks. It's kind of the step before the welfare to work program. So you're with us for a certain amount of time doing academics or very simple job searches. Once that time has passed, you're with us for 1 solid month every day, 7 hours a day. It's a full-time job, and we call it job readiness training. It's employability skills. So for a couple of days, we did put some of those students on Allison, and again, overwhelmingly positive response, because it's intuitive, it's easy to get through. It's, for a lot of the courses, I've taken a few myself, it's almost PowerPoint-like. So for a lot of our students that are familiar with that, it is kind of clicking through slides, reading the information. A lot of them are interactive as well, but it's pretty much like most things on Facebook, if you will, nowadays. Next. It's easy to navigate to get through, which is, again, preaching to the choir. It's the key for our demographic. It's got to be easy. It's got to be intuitive. If you're adding complication to my day, I'm not going to use it. So the fact that it's simple to get through, it sells itself. So it's been great. It's what I'm hoping to do next, and I haven't told my teacher this yet, is to incorporate that customer service. I think Mike had a slide of it earlier. That customer service class. We're in a unique position, at least in our part of New York, where customer service is considered a trainable thing. Most Department of Labor areas in the state don't consider customer service or retail a profession or a viable job training. But because of our location near the falls in tourism and hospitality and the casinos, we can train for that. So we've only in the last year really ramped up customer service and retail training as kind of a basic staple of almost all of our job training classes. And what I'd like to do is incorporate the Allison curriculum on there. The reason I say I had hesitated is because a lot of our curriculums are self-developed by our teachers, so they're a little bit they hold on to them. So we're gonna ease it in, but it's something I'm planning on doing very soon.
Sounds great. Sounds like there's lots that you have I want to say plans for, but that like there's a lot of opportunity to actually do a lot of this, which I think is really interesting in your part of the world.
It is. And again, I'm quite frankly, I'm tired of telling people that transportation is our biggest barrier in access. And it's what it's been for the 7 years I've been doing this specific job. It's how do we get our students to where the learning is? And in some cases, it's the biggest problem we have because things that need to be hands-on. I mean, at its heart, BOCES is a vocational school. So welding, nursing, cosmetology, automotive repair, what you would normally think of in a vocational or trade school is what BOCES really does at its heart. Those centers for us are in the middle of nowhere. They're in the middle of cornfields. And there's no more buses. So I'm currently in the process of trying to relocate 2 of our main centers into the hearts of Lockport and Niagara Falls, our population centers in our corner of the world. We're talking about $1 million projects here because there's no buses anymore. We're trying to relocate all of our services because our people cannot get to where our training centers are. So for those hands-on things, certainly there's no way around that, right? Is if you need to learn how to weld, you got to have a torch in your hand. If you need to learn how to build a car, you got to be touching the car. But for the academic piece, for some of the, again, customer service, project management, typing, language skills, which we have a huge migrant and seasonal population in New York, so language skills are a huge, huge deal. Those things can be learned on a phone, on a tablet, in the library. Wherever you can get to a Wi-Fi connection, you can do your learning. And I think that is the next logical step in everything we do. If we're trying to engage as many students as possible, for those of us that were in co-aid, not this past year, but the year before in Denver, we kept being told 35 million adults. There's 35 million adults that don't have a basic education in this country. And I'm sure the number's only going up. So to engage more of those folks, creatively, I think this makes sense.
Nice. I'm actually going to just sort of open up. I don't know if anybody out there has questions that you're welcome to type them, but if you also at this point wanted to unmute and actually ask a question, you're welcome to do that too. I think Chuck has a lot of interesting things going on in his world, but then same thing, are there questions for Mike and Allison and so on? I don't know if it's Mike, I'm just letting it out there.
I've never known adult education people to be quiet, so.
Well, but how this forum, here's one. What are the next steps for, this is from Joel.
Yeah, I see.
The next step for jails who want to get involved?
It might be easiest to take that conversation offline. What I normally say, because that quite frankly is the most common question in this arena is how do we, in the incarcerated world, how do we do it? And actually 2 people while we were in Florida last week pulled me aside, one from Mississippi, one from South Carolina, and said, I don't think our area will ever do it, but how did you do it? The answer is you need to have the willingness of the sheriff's department or whatever corrections department oversees your actual facility. You need to have someone willing to take a chance. Now, I'm always willing to walk people through step by step what we did. And part of it was, I said we're the number 2 of our kind incarcerated computer-based learning in the jail. Syracuse was number 1, Syracuse, New York. So we just called up that superintendent and said, what did you do? And he kind of walked us through it, and then we kind of followed suit. And it really, again, it was about how do you structure security, a network security system around you're granting access to people that cannot have access to anything, and just kind of walk through step by step. But it's really about engaging the actual superintendent, warden, chief, whatever the person at the top of the actual jail staff, runs that, and just saying, here's what we're trying to do. Now, if you're operating in a jail, you're mandated to serve the 21 and under crowd. So the education has to be there. This is the next logical step is granting them access. And certainly what we found is a lot of the kids that we're getting, the 16 to 21 year olds, are already on some computer-based learning program in the jail. In their home district. So it was almost a necessity to have access to computers because things, I don't know if it's just a national thing, but NovaNet, CDOS, there's all the alternative programming that we do at the high school level, almost all of it's computer-based. So these kids that are already marginalized are already pushed into these alternative settings are the ones most likely to then land in our jails. There was no other option. We had to have computer access. So that was kind of part of the presentation to them was, we have to do this. We'll make it as secure as we can, but we have to. And I will say our sheriff and our chief of jails they're just kind of willing to, within reason, work with us on anything.
So my question too is, so then again, in those students, so maybe the example of Dylan, so he took his business course, et cetera. I guess I don't really want to use the word outcome, but I kind of do. Like, so what, what is the expected outcome in theory from those judges? What are they thinking they're going to get out of it?
This might surprise anyone that hasn't dealt with a judge a lot, but they're kind of an altruistic group. They're very positive in what they're looking for. And what I mean by that is they don't care if you pass the course, because again, just like they can't mandate something that costs money, they can't mandate you to be smart enough to do something. So like in the high school equivalency world, they rely on us to say, well, this person's kind of reached their capacity. They're never going to pass this test. Let's focus on a job training program that'll get them employed versus forcing them to bang their head against algebra for the next 5 years. But they really they want them to take something away from it. So when you say outcomes, we always cringe in the incarcerated world, because as any sheriff will tell you, there's no way to prove recidivism because that person can always reoffend. So there's no way to actually say this person is healed or however you want to say it. They're reconcile all their problems. You can't, because they can always land themselves back in the criminal justice system at some point. But as far as that goes, I can just tell you that Dylan's doing well. He is still in the program, and he is still progressing through. Our drug courts in Lockport are the strictest I've ever seen when it comes to what you need to do. So again, the fact that he's still in it and doing reasonably well is just testament to that this is working. As far as some of our experiences go, the judge has never really, I'll take it back. One time he told someone what to take, and that was the person that had been late for 3 meetings that week. He said, you're taking a time management course, and you're going to pass it. That was the only time he assigned something specific. Once he asked for my input, and the person was one of my GED or HSE students, and I said, Judge, make him take an algebra class. Other than that, it's been very wide open, and the people have, again, the response has been great. I don't think we're far enough along to say person A took an entrepreneur class and now has their own business. We're only 6 months in, so we're not there yet. But I'll be happy to share those stories because I know they're coming.
Nice. So there's a question in here, and I guess, Mike, this might be for you, but maybe for both of you guys. Are there, web links for trying things out? Information FAQs or whatever for providers both inside and outside of prison context? That's from Janet.
Sure. Well, I'll go to our website and I'll send on the links. There's links on our website telling the story of
that'd be great.
Of what we've done to date. Can you hear me?
What we'll do at the end of this is we'll send an email, a follow-up email that just has all the links plus the link to the recording of this. So Mike, if you send those to me, I can just send them out.
Sure, we'll do that. Okay. And I just see there's a note there from someone about the Department of Education report, and it's a very useful report. But I guess what's different about what we're doing is the element of free learning is what's really magic here, in the sense that there are some programs costing $5,000 and $6,000 per inmate. Which just is not going to make it accessible to everybody. And if we're really going to address the 6 million people on parole and the 3 million within prison, we have to provide a very scalable solution. So it's not, Allison isn't going to be the only provider of free learning, but free learning is going to increase in quality and in breadth all the time. So it's definitely look to this direction. If not us, just look to this direction and look at other people picking up on it.
So, Mike, are you seeing? I know you've been working with Chuck on this particular thing, and not for very long, I guess. But are you seeing other? Tell us more about who's using Allison in maybe some other unique situations in the United States.
Unique situations.
It sounds like workforce, right? There's lots of workforce training.
Yeah, workforce in a big way. And in the sense of the one that I kind of mentioned tangentially there is that Allison is back-ended into, I think it's actually 28 states. I think I said 22 earlier, workforce portals for each state. So California, Florida, and all that. So literally, if you're unemployed in Florida and you're looking for the state to help you out through that difficult period, that you have to go and register on Employ Florida, employflorida.com. But when you do, they will assist you and they will try and help you get your job. But they'll also say to you, hey, okay, now so you're unemployed. The least that you can do if you have all of this free time is to improve your competitiveness so that you can get back working. And that's why literally hundreds of thousands of people have come through these portals to Allison. And a lot of people get addicted to learning. You give them one course and they complete it and they want to learn more. Two things that come, Allison is a social enterprise, so we're very interested in the social impact of what we do. But two things came from a research that we did about 2 years ago. One was a report that said that of 88% of people who had graduated from Allison said that in completing a course improved their confidence, their self-esteem. And to go to what Chuck is saying is just improving these people's belief of self-worth, that they're more confident. That's why the courses are short. That's how people want courses any day. They don't want big long courses that take 10 weeks to do. Tell me something now, give it to me in an hour and a half, 2.5 hours so that I can learn it. That's a certificate in Allison, and a diploma in Allison takes 9 to 11 hours. So people want to learn quickly. They want to learn a certain amount, but it has to be relatively short. So that's one thing. 88% of people said it made them more confident. 90% of the same profile said that it encouraged them to learn further. And this is what we want society to do, because if we can get them learning at all, and in fact that we find that, and that goes back to what Chuck was saying about the judge. The judge wasn't so interested in what they studied. He just wanted them to study. And even going back to the case of Dylan there, Dylan had quit. He had never finished his high school exams. He left early. He had never seen learning like he saw on the Allison platform until someone said it to him, hey, this is here, and by the way, it's free. And then he went into it and he was doing a course, and he then responded to Chuck and I, and he was saying, hey, this guy, my brother has a landscaping business. Maybe now I'm learning about things like accounting, about customer services, about project management. I'm learning these things. No one ever taught me this stuff. I didn't even know where to begin to think about how you might run a business. And he's saying, well, maybe I could have my own business in time. So, okay, it's an awful long way to go for Dylan yet, but to even hear him say, well, maybe I can do that. And isn't that what we want everyone in a circumstance that we want to better across the states to say, hey, I can do better, and I have free time, and I can learn. And to provide to people that want opportunity to learn, to provide them with as wide a learning opportunity as possible, because a lot of people might not be interested in business courses, but they might be interested in doing a language. They might be a Spanish speaker. Let's improve their English. It might be the thing that's stopping them getting a job, but they might be the last person that's going to actually enroll themselves in the local college to improve their English. So that's the other nice thing about, besides the transport issue, it's that there's no one looking over your shoulder saying, hey, you just got 30% or 20% in an exam. No one can see it. And on Allison, you can actually do the course over again and do the retest, so that eventually you get up to the 80% test mark. The challenge is that you just have to keep at that standard.
So one quick question, we have about 2 minutes left here, but I think the other thing that comes up for people ask me this question all the time, as I'm a big advocate for technology, right? They talk a lot about this type of student and needing a lot of support as they try to go through an online course. What's both of your experiences on that?
Okay, if I can just take it first. It's really important to keep the courses short. Right, so an hour and a half to 2 hours, people can handle that. You have to develop the course as interactively as you can. You have to have, just good pedagogic standards. You need to awaken the different senses fairly regularly at different intervals right through the course. So it's important how they're constructed. And then it's, providing a course that is actually of interest to people and figuring out what course that might be. So it's about personalization, it's about relevancy, and you can do a lot of that online. Now, and I'll just finish with the comment to say that, you know, I'm the first to say that technology is not the full answer in education. Of course it's not. In some circumstances, you're going to have to show that person how to weld. You're going to have to introduce that person so that you can talk peer-to-peer with somebody. But in terms of fact-based learning, it's hard to beat it. This is online, free online. Hard to beat when it's just about facts. Maybe you can add to that, Joe.
No, the time is number one. Again, our students are usually single parents with a million things on their plate, so time is key. But I gotta tell you, we've only had exactly one issue in this entire process, and it's got nothing to do with Allison. It's got to do with Allison's going to send you an email confirmation, and it's getting our folks to remember how the hell to get into their email account. So that's really been the only struggle we've come up with a few times, is getting that person into their actual email account so they can accept the invitation to the study group that we've provided from Allison. So as far as internally, as far as searching classes, getting actually through the courses, taking the tests, I haven't heard a single person have any issues. So it's just remembering your own password, as I'm sure most of us have had to struggle with at some point in our lives, has been the only issue we've had.
True enough. Probably. Well, okay. So we've gone an hour. So I want to thank both Mike and Chuck for being here and being a part of our webinar and really engaging us in a very interesting conversation, I feel. Like I said, for those of you who attended, thank you guys also for attending. And we will send out a quick follow-up that'll have some of these links that you guys have asked for. And then we'll also a link to the recorded version of this webinar in case you want to share it with somebody. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Take care.
Yep.